Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the updates 1.97 dev server, and it's time to have a look at two vehicles that are coming to the tree for the Swedish ground. And this is the Strf 90C, or as I know it, the CV90, and then the Lvkv 90C, which is basically just a CV90 with a radar on it, which is why, we're doing them both in one singular video. One is an AA version, and one is just a standard version, so let's get through them. Let's get talking about them because there's a lot of interesting stuff about them. So first of all, let's talk about the armor that you find on the CV90. The armor itself is not great. Pretty much what you're talking about is 35mm on its main upper glacis, but just like a lot of Swedish vehicles, it relies heavily on angles to be able to ricochet shots and ricochet stuff away from the armor. So instead of the armor itself being that thick, it is hoping that people will bounce and ricochet off of it instead of just eating it. You can see why there's a ton of different angles here, such as this one here, obviously the whole upper glacis. The only place there that doesn't really exist is here, which is, the lower glacis, and that's why you have this like 100mm thick piece of composite screen. So yeah, it's definitely one of those machines which it isn't really gonna deflect a lot of stuff, but you can see the general idea from the front of it. What they're trying to do, they're just trying to make it so stuff reflects off of it and then they can fire back. On the sides you have 50mm of composite screen, then 50mm of composite screen on each side of the turret. On the booty, we're looking at 20mm unfortunately, and 10mm in places, and 5mm on the back of this turret, but that is some external stuff, external packages, where the back of the turret is actually 20mm. So overall, we're not looking at a ton of armor on this machine, but it might bounce a lot more than what may meet the eye, just because of the fact that it has that modular armor and how it may break off and how much it may actually deflect. The other thing is, if we have a look at the X-ray, there is a 4-man crew in the CV90, and one of them is sat way down in the back. So knocking out its turrets, if this thing doesn't get hull broken, would not kill this machine. So you could knock out the turret. It's going to be really hard to kill this guy if you do knock out the turret. Maybe you hit the driver and that's how you kill it instead, but it will normally mean that this thing can soak a shot as long as it doesn't have hull break. Also, it has the composite armor in the center, which splits the engine and the transmission away from the crew members, and also you can see that the ammunition is set up in a horizontal way, very similar to the T72 and also the ZTZ 96A, so it's going to be hard to hit that, if I'm quite honest. If it was set up vertically, it would be much easier to hit, but at least from what we're seeing here, it's not going to be the easiest shot in the world to make it go pop. So yeah, it's definitely much better for its survivability. There's obviously the radiator all along the side of the CV90. For some reason, all of the CV90s have this radiator. They all have incredibly similar hulls, if not exactly the same hulls, so yeah. Anyway, let's talk about the gun, because this is a 9.3 vehicle at rank 6. If you want to know where it is in the tech tree, this one is right here, the Strf 90C, and the AA version, the Lvkv 90C, is sat right here. So the Strf 90C has a 40mm gun. This is a Bofors. It's a Bofors L70, or it's a even more advanced version of the Bofors. It is fully stabilized in-game. It has 8 degrees of gun depression. The turret rotation's pretty good on it. It's got a crazy reload rate. Like, it can really bap, 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 bap. But it is also at 9.3. And at 9.3, you're thinking, well, how would a Bofors or how would a 40mm work at 9.3? Well, you give it APF-SDS, don't you? Because why the hell not? So what we have here is you start off with a default shell of APF-SDS. It has 143mm, 12483. Then you get a HE, which also comes with it. But then you get a HE VT, which is kind of cool. And then also you get another APF-SDS round as a rank 4 modification, 170, 147, 98mm respectively. And at rank 3, 3, you also get access to thermals for the STRF. Now, what is interesting about it is, so normally for vehicles which actually have the capability of scouting, what you normally see is a set of modifications here, normally optical modifications and airstrike modifications, but that doesn't exist on the Strf 90C. And we took the machine into a battle earlier to look around Sweden, and it did have scouting. So the Strf 90C, even though it doesn't have those modifications right now, does have the ability to scout. Now, whether what's going to happen is one or twofold. It's going to lose the scouting, or the other one is they add in those modifications. We're going to have to see while it goes on. But just understand, as of this moment, as of recording, this thing does have scouting, which is nice. So it has the upgraded APF-SDS. It has HEVT to be able to deal with planes. It's looking like a pretty fun vehicle, right? Apart from the fact that it's going to struggle to pen a lot of stuff, it still can annoy a lot of things, and generally the way that a lot of these IFVs work, because obviously the CV90 is an IFV at heart, normally what happens is what bails you out is the ATGM. But this version has no ATGM, so there's no bailing out from that. So you're just going to have to use the gun to the best of your ability and hope that you can bap people. It can also fit a bunch of people in the back, as you can see here. That's why it's empty, but unfortunately there is nobody there. And the engine being 550 horsepower, powering a 28.5 ton vehicle, I can think about, a better power to weight, but it's not terrible. Then let's go on to the, not that machine, that's just an ATGM carrier. So the Lvkv 90C is exactly the same as the Strf 90C, apart from it has slightly different armor on it. This one supposedly has more armor somehow, which I just don't understand, because if you actually have a look at this, it says this is 35mm at 150, whereas if you look at this, it's only 65 here with 45, 33 and 10. So there's definitely something odd and weird going on with the numbers for the armor, so take all of that with a pinch of salt. But this thing has the same gun as the Strf 90C. The difference is the ammunition choices. So it does get an APF-SDS, but it's the weaker APF-SDS. It gets access to the HE that we saw before, and also it gets access to the HEVT. So it doesn't get that upgraded APF-SDS round. Instead, what it gets is nothing. It gets absolutely nothing, and therefore, it just is how it is. So you can see the main differences between the two here, where the smoke grenades are rank 1 for the Strf 90C, and for the Lvkv 90C, the smoke grenades are rank 3. And also, the other thing is the loss of the APF-SDS for the anti-air version. So let's talk about the anti-air version and also show you, how good the HEVT is. Another thing to actually note is this one gets a hell of a lot less ammunition. So this only gets 60 rounds. According to the dev server, whereas this gets 234. So just take that into account as well. You can see this has a lot less rounds. It doesn't even have a full circle, and I've got a feeling that might be a bug, but once again, it's really hard to tell when it comes to this vehicle. So yeah, simple as. There's also some nice skins for the CV90, which I'll show on after this, but this has just your kind of generic radar, so it's incredibly powerful, the radar that it has. All it does is do exactly what pretty much every other radar does. It clips on. You can see that we're having an issue when it comes to the aiming of the vehicle, but once we sort that out, this is once again a bug, which I'm sure will be fixed once it gets to live. But if we just do this, it's proxy shells and good night. You see how easy it is with the proxy shells? All you have to do is knock something off, and because of the fire rates of these guns, because it is incredibly impressive, then all you have to really do is just, bam, 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 and then destroyed. So even though you don't get a ton of ammunition with this thing, even though it is literally just a CV90 with an R2-D2 box on it, it's going to be incredibly good against aircraft in general. It's going to just bap them, and then if everything goes wrong, then what you can do is you can quickly switch ammunition, and then you can just batter any of the vehicles that are in front of you as well. And as you can see, it is pretty easy to do when you have, you know, APFSDS, which goes through everything. You just annihilate everything in your path, which is exactly what we're doing in this wonderful CV90. So that is something, you know, to look forward to when it comes to the higher echelons of the Swedish tech tree. Another thing I just want to show is the customization. So the customization, we have the Tricolor Summer. We have the Desert Camo Late, Urban Deforming, my favorite camo so far. Then we have the Unicolor Winter, and then the Tricolor Winter as well, which is also kind of nice on this. So, you know, we'll give it a go. The main thing to understand is both versions of the CV90 are incredibly similar to each other. They both slightly have their quirks to them. I really hope that they fix the ammunition on the other one, because I just feel like it's kind of deemed unfair to be able to have a lot less ammo, so you don't have the same capability. Because obviously if this thing had, you know, radar guided AA, a lot of people would be using it instead of the one which is kind of sat there in the wings for now. Turns out APFSDS is still really good when it pans. Who would have thunk, you know? Ooh, hello. But the CV90, I think, at least the one which is going to, you know, have to head on MBTs and stuff like that, I think a lot of it is going to really depend on how it's able to find nooks and how it's able to find crannies. And I think with stuff like thermals, I think with stuff such as, you know, you know, weak spots on vehicles, it's going to be really easy for them just to mash like the fire button and then just make sure to kill everything along the way. It's really easy to do that, and I'm sure there have been many people who have done it in the past, and maybe you want to do it in the future, and that's okay. But at least for right now, when we have a look at the CV90 in general, we have the 105 version for the premium, we have the 40mm version in the tech tree, we have two 40mm versions in the tech tree, and the 120. And I think all I can say is that I am personally satisfied. It has been really nice to see all of these vehicles flesh out top tier Sweden. Yes, I know they're very classified, and yes, I know that this one isn't incredibly fast, but it is just really wonderful to see, just because of the fact that we've been waiting so long for them, and also it shows another evolution into IFVs, which I'm personally happy to see. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I just want to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Lvkv and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.